Well, welcome to Townsville Museum. Townsville Museum has all the history on Townsville, dating from 1865 right through to the present day. We try and offer everything that's related to Townsville: artefacts, stories and photographs. All the collections that you see on display in the museum have been donated. We don't purchase any equipment, we don't purchase any artefacts, but we do accept artefacts from people that are getting rid of their family history. We try and take everything that is related to Townsville. Everything that's on display is Townsville related. Some of it goes back into the 1800s. The Queen's Hotel, for instance, the photographs, the mangle was all used in the Queen's Hotel. The stone artwork came off a building that was ESCA, which was the Engineering Supply Company of Australia. The building was built as a hardware merchants by Smelly and Company, and then unfortunately the building was knocked down and replaced with a modern building some years later. But it was a big engineering company and supplied a lot of people. So the pieces that are on display came off the building. Counting ledgers came from Burnsville, and the large one open is from the Townsville Bulletin, and they were used by the accountants in those companies. We've got a nice selection of medical equipment. We've got the anaesthetic material that was used and equipment that was used in the early days, and then we have glass eyes, and we have a chemist's display. The chemist's display was from Armati and Green, one of the early chemists of Townsville, and it shows you the type of chemicals that were used to make the drugs and the powders that were used and the scales to weigh them up. Well, as you can see, what we've got on display, this is all we can put on display because we don't have the ability to change our displays. We have no storage. And there's a lot more to the medical area, for instance, that we could put on display that depicts what Dr. Bennett did. He was not just a general practitioner, he was a surgeon, an eye surgeon. He did everything. He had his own private hospital. If we had the ability to have a proper medical area, that would feature a lot more of his work. Townsville Museum, we have to include the mining history around the Charters Towers, Ravenswood, Cape River area because that's part of why Townsville exists and it becomes part of our history. The lead lights you see above and the large plaque with the City of Townsville, incorporated 1866, all those pieces were taken out of the old original Town Hall building in Flinders Street, and they were being sent to the dump. And luckily, the driver of the ute who was taking them to the dump brought them to Townsville Museum in 2008. The museum also collects artefacts from social organisations, for instance the Odd Fellows and the Masons, because a lot of people, and the Rotary, a lot of people don't realise that these organisations exist, and retaining their boards and their charters is a very important piece of the history. It's a very popular area for the older people because they remember using the wooden desks and the benches, and they remember the boards, which the kids today don't have. The diary that we have on display came to us anonymously, and when you read the diary, it's a really sad story because it was kept by the widow of Clifford O'Brien, and he went down on the Yongala, and his wife, Elizabeth, kept all the newspaper cuttings. She put in her marriage certificate, his death certificate, and the certificate of her daughter when she was born 9 months later. So Clifford never got to see his little daughter. But the sad part is that that tragedy in 1911 and then the tragedy of the Titanic was the reason why Townsville in 1913 was given the coastal radio station, which was first built in South Townsville. Whilst the diary is very sad to read, it's also a significant part of Townsville's history, and it makes a compelling museum display. Well, Townsville Museum hasn't got anything digitised. None of our photographs are on digital form. Everything is in catalogues. You have to actually physically see them. We do have them on a computer system. You can have a look there, but nothing has been digitised, mainly because we're trying to keep them without putting them out there that people can copy, so that it gives them more significance and more provenance. And then, of course, we've got all our artefacts that you see in this room that will probably never see the light of day. They'll never go on display because of the size of the building that we have. But there is so much of Townsville's history that's so important to keep. And when you get an artefact, you need to have the significance of that piece, plus you need the history behind it. So you need the family history to tell the story. And by having the family history, that makes that artefact worth having. This is a drawer of Townsville City Council building plans. And one of the buildings is the Townsville City Council chambers. A lot of these maps came to us because they were being destroyed by the council. They came to us some years ago from a man by the name of John Matthew, who worked at the City Architects Department, and he saw a need for all these maps to be preserved and plans because they were digitising everything and were throwing out the originals. So we were fortunate to get all those maps off John. We can provide access for researchers to look at our photographs, look at what we have put away, what we've preserved, which includes clothing. We've also got preserved books. We have a small library, and then we have preserved library as well, so that they're not available to the public, but for researchers we do allow them to have a look. Photographs, maps, plans, they're all available.